That's Jeremy Hunt, the Foreign Secretary. Let's talk first to Stephen Kinnock. He's the Labour MP for Aberavon, sits on the Brexit Select Committee and is a supporter of another referendum. Mr Kinnock, good evening to you.
Good evening, Andrew. Hi.
Do you think Jeremy Hunt's right? If there's a second referendum and Brexit is reversed, we could see social unrest?
Just quickly, I've never supported a second referendum.
Right.
I'm Norway, so
okay.
I've been for the last 2 years advocating that we leave with a soft Brexit,
Sure.
like going into the European Economic Area. In terms of Jeremy Hunt, well, what we know is it's a leadership bid. Jeremy voted Remain, campaigned for Remain. He now has to bolster his credentials with the membership of the Conservative Party, which is massively pro-Brexit. So that's why also at party conference he made that speech saying that the European Union was like the Soviet Union. And it's just appalling. It's so transparent what he's doing. He's on manoeuvres for the leadership, assuming that Theresa May will be gone soon. In terms of what he said, I think it's very regrettable that he brought that comment about immigration into it, because that, I think, is very divisive. On the second referendum, I mean, I am not a supporter, because I think it's up to Parliament to solve this problem. We've got to step up and do our job as MPs and get this country out of the constitutional crisis that it finds itself in. I don't think there will be social unrest, but I think you could end up in a kind of US-style culture wars where you've just got deeply, deeply divided political views, and Brexit has been poisoning our politics for 2 years now, and I worry that if we go for another referendum, that we will continue to have a very divisive and polarised debate.
You say him mentioning immigration, control of borders is divisive, but why shouldn't he mention that? It was a factor in why many people voted to leave the European Union. They didn't like the idea of free movement of people. And of course, if we go down the route you're advocating of a Norwegian-style Brexit, free movement of people will continue.
What I thought was wrong is that he seemed to be putting social unrest together with these concerns about immigration. I think you've got to be very careful when you start using that kind of language, because you're almost identifying certain groups in society and making them targets. And I think, the Foreign Secretary should think very carefully before he makes that sort of comment. I agree that we need a reformed immigration system. In the European Economic Area, you have these articles, Article 112 and 113, which actually enable an emergency break and a reform of free movement of labour within the European Union. And I also, I agree that if we have unlimited free movement of labour, that can have a negative impact on terms and conditions, sometimes ends up with people at the low skill end of the labour market being exploited by unscrupulous employers. There's nothing Labour about that. There's nothing, left of centre about having people being exploited by employers. So, I think there's a way through this where if we go for the Norway Plus option, we get to leave the European Union, leave the political institutions, the ever closer union, if you like, the political project, but we keep a really strong and solid economic relationship and connection into the single market, 500 million consumers on our doorstep. It's a compromise. It's a trade-off, and that's how life works. So I think we've got to find a way through this in Parliament, and that's the solution I've been arguing for 2 years now.
And are you satisfied, finally, Stephen Kinnock, that the Labour Party is behaving like a responsible opposition, one which said in its election manifesto last year it would work to deliver Brexit? Are you content they are doing that, or do you suspect it's being used by Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor, in every way possible to try to bring down the government and cause a general election? That's their priority, nothing to do with Brexit.
So I think we have a constitutional responsibility as an opposition to table a motion of no confidence when the government loses a vote on its number one central flagship policy. When you have a government which is losing all authority and power, it's losing legitimacy, it's no longer capable of running the country. I think it's our constitutional responsibility as the opposition to table that motion of no confidence. What I do think is, we are saying that we want to renegotiate. And there are many people on all sides of the House that are saying that, because Theresa May has come back with an absolute dog's dinner of a deal, and it's going to get voted down on Tuesday. So we should be talking about alternatives now. We want to renegotiate. We want a permanent customs union and a strong single market deal. I am frustrated, though, that we haven't set out precisely how we do that. And the plan that I've set forward, Norway Plus, actually delivers on Labour's 6 tests, delivers the customs union, and also a strong single market deal. So it's kind of the how. We set out what the what is, but if you have a what without a how, you're lacking credibility. So I'll be honest with you, Andrew, I am frustrated about that, but I hope that the leadership of my party will come round to it and start to put some flesh on the bones of our plan quite urgently.
All right, that's Stephen Kinnock, the Labour MP for Aberafon, who's